Wave effects-enabled devices include a number of on-hardware DSP effects. First of which is a low-cut filter, which removes very low-frequency noise from your microphone signal before it reaches your stream or recording. These could be caused by desk thumps, air movement, traffic outside, even neighbors in your building. All of that low-end rumble muddies up a voice. While the low-cut filter doesn't have any specific settings that can be changed, it has a fixed 80 Hz frequency setting for Wave XLR Mark II, XLR Dock Mark II, and Wave XLR Pro. Wave 3 Mark II is set to 120 Hz. And while low-cut is an option for you to turn off, it's a very subtle effect that cleans up the sound of your microphone. So we recommend leaving it on all the time. Next up is the expander, which can also function exactly like a noise gate, just with some different settings. To help demo this, I have a loud fan running in the background that will be quieting down. The first control is the threshold. Adjust this so it's just below your normal speaking volume. This is where the expander will begin to work once the mic signal drops below this level. When you speak, you're above this line and your voice comes through. So I'm adjusting it right now, and as I speak and try and have a consistent volume here, you can see that the threshold is right just below where I normally would talk. And once the signal is below, it's being activated. Now, even though we selected the threshold, nothing yet is happening. And that's because gain reduction is essentially turned off. So if we bring this down, that is where the expander is now working. Gain reduction is essentially the maximum limit of how much gain reduction you want. No matter what the settings are, it will never reduce it more than what this setting is. So right now it's set to 8 decibels, could be 7, or all the way down to negative 60. So when I'm not talking, you can see the original signal level here, and then what's essentially being outputted down here. So if you're aiming for a noise gate, you set this as low as you want, and it's essentially muted. If you want something that's a little more natural, you would set this right around to where there's just a little bit of sound coming through. In this case, maybe that's 6 decibels, perhaps 7. Next, we'll go into advanced settings. Here is where we'll adjust how the expander behaves more. The ratio is how aggressively the expander pushes down the quieter mic signal for every decibel below the threshold. A higher ratio means that the signal is pushed more strongly to that quieter point. If you want a strictly classic noise gate behavior, then you'll probably want a higher ratio. The attack controls how quickly the expander reacts to your voice. Something fast here is pretty ideal to have it not cut into your voice. Release is how long the expander takes to go back to suppressing the quieter noise. Both of these being fast will help it feel more like a noise gate that you're familiar with. And just as a demo, if we increase these all the way, you can tell how the noise kind of takes a while to go back down again. You can actually see that effect here on the graph. And if I speak, it fades away more slowly. 10 and 100 is pretty good. So as a recap for how to use expander as a noise gate, set your threshold right below your normal speaking level without cutting off your voice. Set your gain reduction all the way down. Go into settings, increase your ratio. And now it's essentially muted. Next up, voice tune is one of the simplest DSP effects in Wave Effects to configure, besides the low-cut filter. And it's one of the most impactful. It's a single slider that applies a combination of compression and harmonic saturation to your voice in real time. Modeled after the way analog tape machines naturally shape audio, the result is a warmer, fuller, and more broadcast-ready sound without touching any other settings. As you can hear, as I adjust the slider while speaking, the fullness and warmth of my voice is changing. The slider goes from 0 to 100. At lower settings, the effect is subtle. Your voice gets a little denser and more consistent without sounding too strong. Push it higher and the warmth and saturation become much more noticeable. Because voice tune includes compression as part of how it works, for a lot of setups, you can use it in place of the compressor entirely. In addition, like with all of the DSP effects on the Wave Effects powered devices, this is also zero latency. And you can hear your voice being processed right in your headphones while you speak. Start somewhere on the lower end and slowly bring up the strength until it feels right for you. Between 20 and 40% is a good spot. A broadcast quality voice often has one thing in common. It sounds even no matter what the voice is or what they are saying. The compressor is what gets you there. And wave effects enabled devices include a compressor stage in the hardware. The expander handled the quiet signal below your voice, and the compressor is here to handle the louder side. It automatically reduces the volume of your loudest moments so your signal stays consistent and controlled throughout. The first control is the threshold. Once your voice pushes above this point, the compressor starts reducing the volume. You'll see the gain reduction meter move as you speak louder than the threshold. The idea is to place this right around the top end of your normal speaking volume. If I begin to speak and adjust, you can see that the louder sections are showing up. I'll bring the threshold down just until the tops of those areas are affected, and then the compressor is only kicking in once the signal gets loud enough. Something around there is pretty good. And of course, all of this is down to personal preference in how it sounds for you. Inside advanced settings, ratio, like with the expander, controls how hard the compressor is affecting the signal once the sound is above the threshold. A 2-to-1 ratio means that for every 2 decibels your voice goes over the threshold, only 1 decibel of increase comes out on the other side. Higher ratios mean more aggressive compression. Like so. As you can see, it's like a brick wall. For natural sounding voice, you want to keep this under 4-to-1. 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 is a good spot. Attack is how quickly the compressor reacts when your voice crosses the threshold. A slightly slower attack lets the initial transient of each word come through before the compression begins to work. Release controls how quickly the compressor lets go after your signal drops down back below the threshold. If these are set too slow and you have a strong ratio, you could experience something called pumping, where the volume is fluctuating too much during speech as you start and stop. Somewhere in the 5 to 10 millisecond range for attack and 50 to 100 milliseconds for release is a pretty good starting point. Back on the main screen, makeup gain brings your overall level back up after compression. Because compression is reducing your loudest peaks, your average level drops, and makeup gain compensates for that. One final mention. This is not the same as clip guard, which is there to prevent distortion and maintain a clear signal. A compressor is there to give you more control over how the signal is processed to produce a flatter, more even volume, which can bring out more detail, but is also simply more comfortable to listen to for your audience in different environments. This is a pretty big reason for why radio traditionally has strong, noticeable compression. And finally, the wave effects processor includes an equalizer, which lets you shape the tonal character of your voice. Every room and every microphone sounds different on its own, and EQ gives you the ability to correct problem frequencies and make your voice sound clearer and more controlled in the mix. This EQ can control up to 4 individual bands of frequencies. Each band targets a specific range of your audio, and you can boost or cut that range to change how your voice sounds. Right-click on each of these nodes to change the way it behaves. Maybe you want a custom low cut, which is also a high pass, or vice versa. Or perhaps you wish to boost everything beyond a certain point. For example, a high shelf. Like so. Control the width of a band by selecting that node and using your scroll wheel. Double-click on that node to turn it on and off. The lower bands control the body and warmth of your voice. Boosting here adds fullness. Cutting here cleans up muddiness, especially in rooms that build up low-frequency reflections. The mid-bands are where vocal clarity lives. A small boost around 2 to 4 kHz can make the voice sound more present and intelligible. If your voice sounds harsh or nasally, a small cut in that range tends to help. The upper bands, more on the right, control the air or the brightness of the sound. A gentle boost, with say a high shelf, can add crispness and detail, but too much and it can get sharp or a little bit sibilant. In general, you want to be cutting frequencies as much as you can and avoid boosting. Listen for anything that sounds harsh, muddy, or hollow, and then target that specific range. Small adjustments of just a few decibels go a long way if you're starting from a good place. Ducking is one of the 2 exclusive mixing features with Wave XLR Pro. Ducking automatically lowers the volume of one or more audio channels when another becomes active. The most common use is having game audio or background music pull back the moment you speak, then return to its normal level once you stop. To set it up, you need to select what's called the key channel. This is the audio source that triggers other channels to be ducked. Typically, this would be your microphone. So open up the settings for your microphone, like XLR Mic 1, and go to the Ducking tab and enable Make XLR Mic 1 act as the key channel. At this point, you'll see all the other input channels that will duck against XLR Mic 1. If we only wanted music to be ducked, we could uncheck everything and then only select Spotify. We can then close out of this menu, and if I play some music, and then when I speak, you'll notice that the volume of the music gets quieter. And also you see the meters drop when I speak. In addition, ducking is per mix as well. If you want your stream to hear your ducked audio but nothing else, you can selectively turn off ducking for that particular mix with that source. So now when I'm speaking, you're hearing the ducked audio, but mine is at full volume. And I can flip it around. So now it's ducking for me, and it's not for you. There is more customization for ducking inside of wavelength settings, with low, medium, and high for any of these options. They cover things like threshold of when ducking takes place, how much ducking actually happens, and how quickly ducking is applied and removed. A bit like attack and release in one. These are of course up to personal preference and the type of audio that you have going through Wavelink. Mix Maximizer is the other of the two Wave XLR Pro exclusive effects. Mix Maximizer, as the name implies, works at the mix level instead of on a channel. If your output ever feels quieter than you'd like, this is an easy-to-use control for it without needing to adjust every fader manually. A single slider raises the overall level of the mix, while a built-in limiter catches any peaks before they clip, making your output sound louder and fuller without distortion. Here, we have some especially quiet music, but all of our faders are already maxed out. Enable Mix Maximizer in Wavelink by entering the mix options. Then, go to the Mix Settings tab, and then toggle it on. And then from here, adjust the slider up or down until the mix feels right for you. Because this audio is really quiet, I can bring it up to 100%. But 100% for a lot of cases is way too much, so you might find that 25%, 40% works for you. Each of Wave XLR Pro's 5 mixes gets its own independent control, so you can push your stream output up without affecting any of the 4 other mixes at all. A practical example is making a specific mix just to send out to speakers. We'll add Spotify, speakers. Mix Maximizer keeps everything feeling loud and consistent even when a music track or video dips quieter than expected. That covers every effect available with the Wave Effects processor, including the 2 as part of Wave XLR Pro. You don't need to use every single one. Start with a couple and mix and match until your sound feels right for you. Subscribe to learn more about Wavelink, Wave Effects, and other Elgato products. Thanks for watching.